your dad, the late great Lamar Hunt, was the founder of the AFC and the Chiefs, and actually coined the term Super Bowl, as I understand it. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the 1950s, the late 1950s, my dad decided that he wanted to get into the professional sports business, and he picked pro football over baseball because he felt the game televised well. And of course, televised sports was relatively new in the late 1950s. He went to the NFL to try to get an expansion team for his hometown of Dallas. And the NFL commissioner told him two things. First of all, we're not interested in expanding. And secondly, Dallas is a horrible market for pro football, which, of course, today is absolutely laughable. But it didn't deter my dad. He kept working on it. Eventually, he tried to buy a piece of the Chicago Cardinals. And that is the same team that now plays in Arizona. They went from Chicago to St. Louis to Arizona. And the same family actually owns the team. And my dad, tried to buy the team across, several years. And at the end of the day, Walter Wolfner, who was the owner of the team at the time, told my dad, you're not the only guy who's come to see me about buying a team. And so that turned a light bulb on in my dad's head, and he made the decision to start his own league, which became the American Football League, which launched in 1960. Initially, the NFL acted like they didn't care anything about this new upstart league. It wasn't going to be competitive, but very quickly they realized that the AFL was going to be a threat to them. The AFL was trying to sign the same players that the NFL was signing. There were two different drafts, so there was real competition between the two leagues. Ultimately, that led to a discussion in the summer of 1966 to merge the two leagues. And my dad was actually the one who cut the deal with Tex Schramm. They sat in a car at Love Field, the airport in Dallas, and sort of hammered out the details of the merger in April of 1966. However, there were a lot of meetings that had to happen for the merger to become complete. And my dad was in one of those meetings, and there were a bunch of owners from both leagues, and they were talking about this new championship game that would have to start. Because there was an AFL champion, there was an NFL champion, but you needed an overall champion. And one of the owners in the meeting looked at my dad and said, "Which game are you talking about? Are you talking about one of the conference championship games?" And my dad said, "No, I'm talking about the last game, the final game, the Super Bowl." And he just threw it out there like that. And everybody sort of stopped and looked at him. And then they went back to their business. However, the owners and later the staff in the league office began referring to this new championship game as the Super Bowl. The only problem was that the commissioner at the time, whose name was Pete Rozelle, who was a tremendous commissioner for the NFL for several decades, he actively disliked the term Super Bowl. He thought it lacked sophistication. And that's the reason, if you go back to Super Bowl I and Super Bowl II, those games were originally called the AFL NFL World Championship game. But over time, the media heard the term Super Bowl, the fans heard the term Super Bowl, and by the time you get to Super Bowl III, everybody was referring to the game as Super Bowl. So Pete Rozelle threw the towel in and said, "Hey, we're going to call this thing the Super Bowl." So that's how it became the Super Bowl. My dad, after the fact, was asked, "How in the world did you come up with that?" And he said, "Well, it was really just an off-the-cuff thought that I had in that moment, but it probably comes from two things. First of all, I've always been a big fan of college football, and I've been to a bunch of Cotton Bowl games. In fact, I think at one point he had a streak of 35 or 40 straight Cotton Bowl games that he had attended. So that's where the bowl came from. And then in December of 1965, my mother had given me and my older siblings the latest, greatest toy of the day, which was a Whammo Super Bowl. And I was 1 year old at the time, so I don't think I was doing much with my Super Bowl, maybe other than gumming it. But my older siblings, who were about 6 or 7 years old, they had those balls, and they were bouncing them all over the house and in the driveway and over the house. And my dad said, that just stuck in my mind, and I probably took Super, combined it with Bowl, and that's how we got Super Bowl.
I love that story. I never heard that. That's fantastic.